Hello and welcome to this spontaneous edition of the Sister Wound. So my name is Velva Dawn Silver. I am an intuitive and author, a woman who is rising into bringing the feminine energy to the collective. And I am here with a good friend of mine, Emily Ann.
Hello, Velva Dawn. It's so good to see you today.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So this all came forward, first of all, because I'm going to be doing a Sister Wound class on May 20th and 21st. And this idea has been percolating for many, many years. And I wanted to have this conversation with Emily Ann because I feel like it's time as women that we come together. It's time that we recognize that maybe the reason we're feeling may not even have to do with who we are here today, that it actually may connect back to your ancestors. So we're going to talk deeply about the sister wound. We have some questions, and we're going to be just sharing our own experiences and really just bringing awareness to how valuable and how important it is that we begin even recognizing the sister wound and bringing ourselves into how do we recognize if we have it? How do we heal it? How do we release it? And bring the feminine back into true cohesion within ourselves, within our friends, our families, and throughout the world. So the first question that we're going to be talking about, what actually is the sister wound and why do we feel that so many women are carrying this wound? So I'll go first and then I'll let Emily jump in with her response. So what I feel the sister wound is it's deep pain that has been carried through generations of betrayal, of comparison, of judgment, of feeling abandoned, and survival. So many times we're carrying it because it's time for us to heal it. You're the cycle breaker. You're the person probably in your family who's the black sheep, who is the one who speaks your truth. And we are being called to heal this.
Yeah, well, first of all, I really think where we are even in the time frame, right? This has been exponentiating for eons, for centuries, but I really feel it's something that all women carry, whether consciously, unconsciously. And at its core, I feel it is so deeply emotional, personal, and it's just relational pain before women. And, I think a lot of things on the surface, it feels like conflict or jealousy, intimidation, comparison, like all of the things, right? But I feel what makes this wound so deep in particular is that we can feel it before we can name it. It shows up in tension in the body, in guardedness. Like I used to be so guarded around other women, and I was fearful. I was fearful of being misunderstood. I felt competitive, and there was often no present moment explanation for it, right?
And that's why I feel like this is such a good conversation, because sometimes we're not even aware of what's happening, but we just continue being in these unconscious patterns because we don't understand what's happening, what we're feeling, why we're feeling this. In the work that I've been doing for 20 years, I've been working with women, and I've seen patterns within myself and within the women that I work with that are consistently showing up. That this is part of the reason that I created this. So, why now? So what I've seen is that women sometimes are craving the connection, like you were just talking about. It's like you deeply feel like you want to connect, but something is a barrier within you, whether it's in your throat, in your power, in your sacral. And so I'll see women that want to connect and they'll start the connection, but then they pull back. There's
Hmm.
self-sabotage, there's fear, and it's just, comparing yourself to the other women. I'm not good enough. I can't speak as well. I'm not as eloquent. I'm not as beautiful. And what happens is we end up sometimes overgiving. This is something else that I see in the work is, and I've done this myself, where I overgive to ease the tension that I'm feeling. And for me, it's an old pattern that I saw my mother do. And so it was unconsciously a calcified program that I had during my childhood. And people pleasing, right?
Mm,
Feeling
yeah.
unsafe by being seen, right? Whether it goes back to the times of Salem, to the witch burning, and we haven't even explored the witch wound. We're afraid to be seen. We're afraid to truly express who we are. So, how would you answer that question, Emily?
I really agree about women really just longing and yearning for that safe sisterhood. But there's a dichotomy here because at the same time, we're yearning and longing for this connection with other women, our nervous systems are so ingrained that we're still bracing for betrayal. We're still bracing for judgment. We anticipate competition, rejection, emotional inconsistency, abandonment is another big one. And the thing that I've learned is that these patterns, they're not conscious, right? Um, I really, even as a young girl, deeply desired authentic connection with other women while simultaneously fearing it. And it's become clear to me in my own work that there are women carrying an intense hypervigilance around this, and they don't even realize it. We're constantly overanalyzing, reading between the lines, worried about exclusion. We're self-sabotaging, like you said, overgiving, and everything I feel is really rooted in protection. These are survival responses, plain and simple, really. And I find it incredibly interesting that we as women are able to recognize these kinds of emotional wounds and dynamics with men, but with women, it's like we were talking about earlier, it's there, but it's like it's not named. There's tension and there's disease, but there's no constant, like, why am I feeling this? So it's so funny for me personally to be able to identify these exact behaviors within like a woman and a man, but not woman to woman.
And that's a really good point, that we can see it in men. But I think what comes along with that is you don't want to sound like a bitch, right?
Yeah, big
So
time.
there's so many times where we take a step back because you're like, oh, I don't want to say what I actually feel because I'm afraid of being a bitch, right?
Yeah.
So you end up suppressing that energy and what you're feeling, um,
Mm,
in fear, in protection, exactly
yes.
like what you're
Yeah.
saying. Hmm. So, the next question that I want to talk about here is how does this sister wound affect your nervous system? As you were talking about previously, we have the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? So, moving into that, when you meet a woman or you have that connection, your body may normally go into one of these responses and you're not even sure why, because maybe this is the first time you've met this woman or you've joined a circle of women, which takes a lot of confidence. It takes a lot of courage to step into a circle. And this affects our lower three chakras, which is what I feel we're being called to do right now. Really root, look at the ancestral energy that maybe we've never ever looked at. Look at the
Mm,
sacral, look at your response, um, and your power center. Are you fully embodying your internal power, or are you, looking to other women to help you uplift your power? It's internal versus external. So I see these lower three chakras that are very affected. We look at the root, it governs your safety, your belonging, trust, as you were saying, your
mm,
identity, who are you, and your emotional security. So when these are unhealed, your body stays in that protective survival mode. And it deeply affects you in many different ways. So for yourself, how would you say your body has responded, especially those lower three chakras, in exchanges with women like this?
I was a big self-sabotager. I would create something so that that would happen. And looking back on that, I had so much like just guilt and shame surrounding that. But you know, it's like those energy centers, they honestly govern the most foundational aspects of our human experience, if you will. You know, it covers safety, as you're saying, belonging, like our emotional connection, our ability to create, our identity, you know, all of the things. So it's really difficult for me looking back almost. It's almost painful to see how ingrained this was in not only my mind and my mentality, but in my entire body. And it was difficult to work through at first. And I had a lot of like very physical symptoms. I had a lot of exhaustion. I had a lot of sleep dysregulation, a lot of anxiety. You know, I had a lot of difficulty grounding my body, and I had no emotional flow, not even a little bit. So I think a lot for me, the solar plexus was really where I suffered. I had big issues with visibility, with self-worth, like huge self-worth issues, big issues with boundaries, with my voice, with identity, with my personal power. So although it's the three chakras together, and it's so important to work through every single chakra and really kind of examine and move these things through, for me in particular, it was the solar plexus. And it's something I continue to work with till this day, and I will continue to work through my solar plexus until until it's time for my next lifetime, if you will. It's really important, you know, and I don't think that people take into consideration things like the chakras or the epigenetic DNA or things like that, because we're so busy kind of overanalyzing our brain and ourself. And yeah, it can be really difficult. I mean, it's just the perfect storm. Like I was saying, it's physical, it's emotional, it's energetic, and it can be very difficult to move through those lower centers, you know, to find that form of embodiment.
Yeah, you're so right. We don't even realize sometimes, you know, what's happening. And it takes such an expanded level of being open-minded per se to really understand what you're feeling and how the people around you, that energy is being exchanged to cause that within you. It's just the mirror, it's that reflection. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of women, when I look at the work that I do, I find that what happens is, you know, you can usually see when you're in a circle of women what is going on, right? Sometimes when I'm in a circle, this is my ad lib part, I see women that will come in, especially to my teachings, and, you know, we allow a 5-minute slot for them to share, and it's been half an hour. And what I realized is that they'd never been heard. You know, this was a space for them to use their voice, to feel held. And that's another part when we look at the sacral chakra and the root, is many times as women, we've never been held in a really, truly unconditional space. There's always been conditions, right? It's like, if you do this, your external will be this. And so you hold back things that you're truly wanting to say because you're afraid of the conditions that come with that. So the next question is, you know, many women struggle with comparison, with jealousy, competition, or feeling unsafe, as we talked about at the beginning. So, you know, where do these patterns truly come from? And from my perspective, in the work I've done and in my own being a daughter, is they come from your childhood conditioning, like I was talking about. If you didn't have a family dynamic with your parents, maybe you didn't even have both parents, sometimes you don't have that unconditional safety, the freedom, the fluidity. and from ancestral survival, like you were talking about at the beginning. It's like you're programmed to survive. Everything internally in the nervous system is running on that. And it's like when we look around, you start looking at, okay, they're speaking their truth. They are saying things that I want to say, but I'm withholding them. And this is what we're moving into in 2026, where women are really starting to stand in their power, and they're starting to say what they know, and they know they're going to be safe in doing so. And there has never been more of a vital time than for women to be sharing their truth as of now, while the patriarchy is collapsing. It is such an important time. And the last part of this for me is women learned that love, attention, and safety had to be earned or competed for. So my hope, honestly, and this is why I do the teachings with the embodied femme, is that women realize that you're loved unconditionally and that you are safe. It doesn't have to be earned. It is just because you are human. And what do you feel about that? You know, where do you feel the patterns come from that you have seen in your experience?
Just thinking in the current lifetime, I agree with you. It's childhood conditioning, because our mothers and grandmothers and their mothers and grandmothers, you know, have all been participating unknowingly in these disconnections. But I also feel like that disconnection is the disconnection from self. And I feel like it is something much older within the feminine collective that we even realize. You know, there was a time when we were so deeply connected to the earth, to intuition, creation, healing, all of it. We were healers and mystics and medicine keepers and midwives and all of the things, right? And it was deeply powerful and deeply intuitive and deeply embodied, and it was connected to life itself, right? And as you were bringing in the patriarchal systems, I really feel like over time, the goal was divide and conquer. You know, it was that severing of women from one another. I feel that really carries the deepest wound, not only from the suppression of like the feminine power itself, but it severed the women. It severed us from one another. And we were conditioned to compete rather than unite. And we were conditioned, as you were saying, to compare rather to connect. And I don't really feel women were originally designed to exist like in a chronic emotional competition with one another. You know, as we've been saying throughout this entire chat, we've been conditioned through generations of survival dynamics, through fractured families and just everything. And that relational safety is just gone. So it's funny because in so many ways, I don't feel like the sister wound is even the original wound. I feel like the original wound was the fracturing of our feminine unity through that fear and control that the patriarchy brought in. And, you know, I feel like the sister wound is often the survival expression, if you will, and the relational consequences of that much older separation.
That is super powerful. And I feel like that's why this is vital right now, because I feel like we've been doing the work on the feminine within ourselves for many, many years, right? And now that is established within us, you know, we're letting go of the obligation. We know we deserve to receive. We know how to love ourselves. Going beyond that, depth is bringing the feminine energy into collaboration, in cohesion, and start building now that that foundational feminine has been, you know, healed within each of us. Allowing that to continue building up is the strength in numbers, but the strength of the deep work that we're doing within ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, you even as you were saying earlier about beauty being tied to like worth, and it's so true, you know, and I feel like that's a lot of where the propaganda really helped lend to the fracture of sisterhood and of feminine unity, because beauty became tied to worth. And so all of a sudden women that maybe didn't feel beautiful, they thought a beautiful woman was a threat. Silence became tied to safety, right? Visibility became a very big risk. One of the things I feel like is really the root of that, I really feel like it's grief, Velva Dawn. It's grief, really. And that's one of the biggest root through all of this. It's grief surrounding separation from our authentic feminine self, but also our feminine connection to other women. right?
Hmm. Hmm. And I just want to add something to that because I find, when I started even the Goddess Healing Matrix system, women would come in and they would say to me, I feel like I'm finally home. I heard that from
Yes.
so many women. They said, I feel like I've actually landed where I'm supposed to be. And I found that was a common reply to people who were
Mhm.
in circle. And I think it's the biggest affirmation of what women are needing is a place to feel everything they need to feel and knowing that it's safe no matter what they have to release.
Yeah, it's so true. That was the first thing I felt when I did Higher Priestess Practitioner level 1 with you. I think I had even said that in one of my final essays. I just felt like I was home. There was no tension. There was no competition. There was just a group of women who just wanted to give their best, right? And the friendships that I made from that first original group that I was in with level 1 are all of those women are still in my life today. They're still hugely supportive, and I'm able to be supportive of them. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I have to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. It just, there's so much gratitude for you and I even meeting. And what makes my heart so proud is I see exactly that. I see women who came in back when we started in 2009 and they're still friends, or they've branched off and they're doing business ventures, they're collaborating, which
Yes.
is, I'm like, it makes me so happy because that's truly what I wanted to see and I wanted to create um, in that space. So let's talk about the witch wound, okay?
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about the ancestral lineage of the witch wound and how it plays a role in the fear that women feel around visibility, power, and fully owning their gifts. Okay. So, something that I shared a few days ago in my Facebook post is I had a very special horse years
Mm,
ago, and the horse's name was Luna. And she actually had a crescent moon on her forehead. And she was really sick. And this was at the beginning of my journey understanding that I was a healer.
mm.
And I remember the horse being sick, and I just picked up her head and I put it on my lap as I was on the grass. And I heard her say to me, "You are magic. You can create magic, and I'm going to show you how." And a long story short, you can read more in my book, Ancient Secrets of the Goddesses. I think it's chapter 5, which is called Luna, where I share the whole story about how that horse awakened my healing ability through this deep trust that I had. And I remember a psychic told me a long time ago, which is why I quit at the hospital. She said, "You have healing hands. You need to use them." And I'm like, I'm not
Gosh.
giving up my job. I am not doing that. And so when I began, I couldn't even feel crystals in the palms of my hand. I would hold them in my hand, but I felt nothing. So it took time, it took shedding away, it took expanding the inner energy within my body and remembering my connection to the crystals. And once that
Mm,
happened, now if there's a crystal even close to me in a room, I can feel the energy without even touching it. And of course, I've been doing hands-on healing since 2009 with a steady clientele. And what I feel is that all came from the moment of trusting. And it was
mm,
me moving through my witch wound that I had blocked my own remembrance of my own power, my own medicine, how I connect to the elements, to the herbs, to the earth, because there was a fear there of being seen again and
mm.
those past lives of being killed for using that. And now that I've opened that up, I'm not afraid to speak my truth. I use my intuition all of the time. I'm not afraid to be visible. And my healing skills are super powerful. And I love doing my healing sessions. Yes, I've taken 30 plus different modalities, but at the end of the day, it is my ancestral power and the remembrance of that DNA awakening, not just from the witch wound, from many lifetimes that I have had, where I have access to that dimensional energy and I bring it through out my hands. And it's constantly evolving and shifting, and sessions are never the same. And
Yeah.
so for me, that's how the witch wound played a role for me. Is I was afraid to open that up, and I was afraid of my own power. I was afraid of unleashing it all and what would happen if I did. So it's been a blessing in working through this, which I still am, but really understanding the power that comes with the light of the ancient medicine. So how about you?
It's so loaded, Velva Dawn. And first, let me just say and comment, if I may, that this happened for you so organically. I love, and as you were just speaking about this experience with Luna, it really dropped in that this is one of the reasons I feel that you are such a powerful teacher, because this came organically to you. Whereas for many women, it doesn't come organically for us. We do need, assistance and help from mentors and teachers and things like that. But it just became so clear to me why you are so good at what you do, because I mean, it's not every day that something like that happens organically to someone, because there's so much static, right? And it's a beautiful thing. So when I think of the witch wound, oh, you're welcome. I remember as a little girl being extremely connected to nature. I just wanted to be outside 24/7, touching rocks, holding rocks, touching the trees and the grass, and it was such a palpable experience for me. But I noticed probably when I got to probably like 12, 13 years old, nothing had changed. I was still outside doing the same things I did when I was 2 or 3. We would make potions and, all of these fun little things. And I started becoming shamed for that. Like even my friends who were moving into different things in their preteens. And even like I remember my dad, and this was nothing that he was saying wasn't his own conditioning itself, but I remember him kind of shaming me, like, come on, you're 12, 13 years old, like, get with it, why are you still doing this? And I almost felt ashamed about my connection with nature and with animals. And I think that the witch wound can be understood like in so many ways, Velva Dawn, spiritually, historically, psychologically, and the big one, of course, ancestrally. But regardless of how someone interprets it, I think that the historical reality is that women were so brutally punished for existing outside of the controlled societal roles because of the continuing patriarchal interference, the suppression, the propaganda. I mean, you can't sugarcoat it. Women were accused, they were tortured, they were drowned, they were burned alive, publicly humiliated, imprisoned. These are things that we need to be able to say out loud. We couldn't be sexually expressive, but we still cannot really be sexually expressive in a way that's healthy, without judgment or even shaming ourselves for it. So I think it's really incredible. And I also think that it's really important that we stop minimizing the severity of the reality of the witch wound and the sister wound, because it's not symbolic and it's not metaphorical, Velva Dawn. I mean, we've witnessed unimaginable violence inflicted upon other women for embodying our power and our voice and our wisdom and intuition and all of it, our autonomy, our sexuality. So, entire generations of women before us learned that visibility is dangerous. And, these horrors are not nearly as ancient as I think people realize. Even like right now, our autonomy and our identity and credibility and sanity, there's a lot of systemic control over that stuff, right?
Yes. I think you're very accurate that it's really not that far back, right?
No.
And if you look at many cultures today, some of it is still going on, right? Where women are not as visible as they could be. Why is connection to the earth and nature so important for feminine healing and nervous system regulation? So nature nurtures. Right. You and I
Yes.
love the ocean, right? We're mermaids and we love to be swimming deep in the depths. Not every
Yeah.
woman loves that. Not every woman is feels safe in the water, right? So, um, nature is one, grounding excess emotional energy helps discharge it from your body. And I feel
Mm,
like I'm finally hearing the term, more so collectively, where people, even men, are like, oh, I need to ground. They
mm,
understand what the term grounding means, spreading your roots from the soles of your feet down to the core of the earth and releasing any excess energy, right? If you don't go and see an energy healer regularly, or you're not doing things to tone your auric field to clear it, you got to discharge the energy into the earth and then ask for Gaia, Mother Earth, to send you that support for your legs, for your temples, so your body feels loved unconditionally, as above, so below, bringing your body into that vessel. The other thing is that the earth connects wisdom back to our bodies. It's like we
mhm.
remember our cycles of life, just like it's snowing here right now, and it's May. It's like we have the seasons, and Mother Earth helps support the seasons that we go through, from being a teenager to a mother to a wise one going through menopause. And
Mm.
I feel like the connection to Earth helps just support our bodies. And how do you feel that the Earth helps with the
Oh
femininity?
gosh. Well, you know how I feel about Earth. I love Mother Earth. I love Gaia. I love nature. I love wildlife. I am a wildlife rehabilitator by design. And I have to tell you, nature is the most profound regulator of the human nervous system because, as you were saying about the rhythms, nature itself exists in coherence, right? It's the circadian rhythms, it's the intelligence, it's the cycles, it's the energetic balance. We were never, ever designed as human beings to exist in chronic disconnection from the earth. And that's what's happened. And because I feel like the female body is just so deeply just connected to our natural rhythm and the lunar cycles and the water and the geomagnetics and intuition and energetic flow and all of that. I feel like when we become chronically overstimulated and emotionally armored, we become so disconnected from our body and trapped in survival activation that our nervous system just loses its natural sense of homeostasis altogether. And nature restores that. The earth naturally regulates that. So it's just water, as you were saying, the ocean. The water for me deeply regulates my sacral chakra. Every time I'm in the ocean or in the water, I definitely have such an emotional flow come up, and it often leads to like fire cycles for me. So yeah, in sunlight, I mean, we all need it to survive. We are nature. We are literally nature. The body responds so profoundly to nature. It reduces our cortisol, it regulates our nervous system, it improves our vagal tone, it lowers inflammation, it stabilizes our rhythms, it totally improves emotional regulation. I mean, how many people do you know that are having a bad day that simply go for a walk and they come home and they're like, oh, I feel better, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. There is so much overstimulation through devices, through everything that's going on. And I feel like once more we're simplifying. It's like getting back to the basics, going outside, connecting with the animals, connecting with nature. I find it's like we're being drawn back, right? We're cycling back around to, what we know is best. So,
Yeah. The thing I love so much about nature too is that it doesn't compete, it doesn't shame you, it doesn't compare you to anybody. It just exists in neutrality and in perfect, authentic expression and interconnected balance. And the
mm-hmm,
body remembers that there's safety there.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it automatically knows what to do
It
in that
knows, yeah.
connection. Yeah, you're
Hmm.
right. That's powerful. Mm, very good words, Emily. So, what happens when women begin healing these wounds and rebuilding safety within themselves and with other women? So, they often experience a deeper emotional safety. They start to
Mm,
open up, they start to blossom, they start to glow from the inside out. They end up having healthier relationships in every from marriages to being parents to being daughters to being sisters, stronger boundaries.
mm,
This is something that I've had to learn in the work I've done in all these years is I don't have to be everyone's friend, right?
mm,
um, but having the stronger boundaries has taught me how to be able to give to myself, how
mm,
to truly be able to receive and not feel guilty, like to say no, you know?
mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this before that there's the classic, door to availability through social media, through texting.
Mm,
Um, and those are the boundaries that we need to continue to refine and look at, what works. Maybe you need more
mm,
alone time at certain times for things you're going through, but stronger boundaries are super important and really help stabilize that power center deep within you. The other thing that I've seen happen when women begin rebuilding themselves is an authentic confidence. You just
mm,
naturally feel and allow your true divine essence to flow from you because it's natural, it's organic, it just flows from you. It's not something forced, it's not something learned or something you read in a book, but it flows. And the last point to my answer to this, it's a greater ability to support and celebrate women. And what would you like to add to this question?
yeah, I think like even just thinking about my own experience, one of the first things that began with me was that I really felt like a softening and an unwinding, and I felt sheer exhaustion because all of a sudden it was like the emotional guarding kind of started to dissipate and the survival activation started to settle down, the hypervigilance started to settle down. And I had, for myself personally, I had a very bad habit of like subconsciously scanning for threat around me. One of the first things that I've noticed in women that I work with, but also within myself, is that you end up having root chakra stabilization, and women will start to feel safer within themselves and safer within their bodies, like as you were just talking about. And once that happens, they start to bloom. They start feeling safer within authentic connection and community and things of that nature. So, it's beautiful to me when I see women becoming more capable of intimacy and trust and emotional safety. Collaboration is a huge one for me. I love collaborating with women. I love it. I don't think there's anything more powerful than that. And compassion. Compassion is another one. Not so much for others at first, but self-compassion, which we know is so, so, so important. So between like the improvement of the regulation and the nervous system. It just, I see women becoming, feeling more embodied, more grounded, more present, and most importantly, just more connected to themselves. It's really important to go within. We can pull so much more awakening from going within and then looking externally.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like an egg, right?
Mm,
You can't,
yeah.
you can't, you can't get to the best part if the shell is on, right? And I find that's kind of how I see women that come into work, and even myself years ago, is when we have that shell of protection, we can't really get to the good parts. Okay, so our last question here, if there is one thing, that you would hope every woman walks away, specifically after this masterclass, that is being presented on May 20th and 21st, what would that be? So for me, it would be all that she walks away understanding that she is not broken.
Mm-hmm.
She is
Bingo.
She is not broken, and healing the sister wound actually allows her to reconnect to her power, to her softness, her true self, and her sense of belonging. What would your intention be after the masterclass?
I would love to see women walk away with a deep understanding of themselves. Like you just said, you're not broken. There are explanations for these things, even if you're in a position where you can't name them right now. And I would love to see women with a deep understanding and compassion for themselves, because as I was saying earlier, I feel like that self-compassion is truly where the healing all begins. It's just, we didn't become fragmented overnight, and we're not going to heal every night, but every single woman who is willing to step in and step up and to consciously unwind all of these inherited patterns that have been created with more coherence and more emotional safety and more compassion and more connection. Like I was saying earlier, it's not only going to be for them, but the collective field itself. And I really just want to see women soften and to just be able to breathe, Velva Dawn, to just be able to breathe and to really be able to feel what true sisterhood is and what it means, and to have that support and not be afraid to receive that support and not be afraid to give that support. And you know, this possibility alone makes this healing worth everything.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful intention to hold. And this is just you and I talking
Right.
about what our intention is to hold. And this is exactly why I want to thank you, Emily, for taking this time to sit in this space with me and to share openly and honestly about something so vitally important.
So welcome, and thank you for inviting me to have this conversation. It's powerful, it's important, and I really just, once you kind of are able to move through the sister one, you feel that longing, it almost becomes deeper, that longing to connect with more women and more women and more women. So this is a really, really powerful subject. And having already looked through the context that you've put together, you have put together some really powerful exercises. And I just hope that we see, many women step into the circle with us. There's a lot to talk about, right?
There is. This is just a mini masterclass. I feel like this is going to be a deeper part of the Evolve Femme, which we will begin in September. Again, where we have 6 to 8 weeks where we sit down and we really go into deep to more of these qualities. So if you want more information, we'll have the website posted. And this class begins May 20th and 21st. Begins at 5:30 p.m. MST, and it will be recorded. So if you're feeling called, if you feel like you want to sit in this space with us, just know you're going to be held unconditionally and supported, loved, and a deeper awakening is going to happen for the sister wound and for the world. So I hope to see you all there. And if not, you can find me anywhere on social medias: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Substack, and my website, www.velvadawn.com. Thank you so much. Until we meet again, goodbye.